Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's video 44 coming at you with another video. So today I want to hop into the San Antonio Spurs roster to see what I can find there. The thing about the Spurs that's really interesting is they have a lot of young players that kind of play similar positions, if not the same position, and they're gonna be having a lot of opportunities because of the absence of a guy like Rudy Gay and of course DeMar DeRozan. Now some of those players can start getting more minutes. Now they can start slipping into the roles they're expected to play in the future for this team. So for me, even though this is a year where San Antonio is not expected to make the playoffs, I'm very very excited about the young players that they have on this team. I think a lot of them, looking at these names, a good portion of them have an opportunity to step into their own as soon as this season. So let's jump into it. The first name I want to talk about when you're mentioning the Spurs right now, the name for me that comes to mind first is Murray, DeJounte Murray. And DeJounte Murray is a player who's had some bad luck with his injury issues. It seems like every time he gets in shape, ready to start and play for this team in a way that really showcases himself, he just gets hurt. But I tell you, when he's out there, he's a monster. He was one of those players when he was first drafted where you knew that if his body was to ever fill out properly, he was going to be able to do some things on the court that weren't average. He was a fantastic passer. His shooting wasn't really ever his biggest strength, but I know he's been working on that. He's very athletic, extremely defensive-minded, great passer, athletic player. So this is somebody who's going to be stepping into his own, I think, very soon. He's already shown us that his upside is all-star level. And I don't know that this would be the year that he would do that, but you're going to know of DeJounte Murray this season. I think you're going to know of him, health permitting, of course. He's going to be somebody who's going to be able to flex some and have a leading role with this team. So that's what I think of DeJounte Murray. I'm looking forward to his season. The next name that you're going to mention here is Kelden Johnson, the guy who played with the USA team. Very, very talented forward. They seemingly found out of nowhere. This guy just stepped into his own and kind of made a way for himself in spite of the fact that the guys like Gay and DeRozan were on the team at the time. He was still able to step into his own and show everybody where he excels in, which is shooting the ball, scoring the ball, and rebounding the ball. He is a really, really good power forward, small forward combination player who's just going to continue to get better and better. He's going to be one of the main scoring options on this team, and I'm a big fan of what it is that he's shown us thus far. Another reason for the San Antonios to feel fantastic about their future, because this guy is going to be a part of that roster. The next name I want to mention is Jakob Poeltl, and he's their center. It's a guy that was drafted to the Toronto Raptors. I think he was fourth or third, about maybe 6 years ago, something like that. And has developed pretty well, man. He's a guy who can rebound the ball. He can block some shots for you. His scoring is coming along. Active player, strong player, 7-footer. So he's somebody that you can feel sturdy about going forward. He's a part of this young core. He fits that timeline as a young player that they can move forward with. So once again, another part of that young core that you can just be very excited about. A center with a really good upside. The next name I want to mention is a guy by the name of Thaddeus Young. And Thaddeus Young has been everything for the Bulls for the last couple years. One of the most underrated players in all of basketball at this stage in his career. He puts up big potential statistical efforts every time out, basically. He's a very consistent player, and he does a little bit of everything. Pass, shoot, rebound, score, mid-range. Particularly good free throw shooter. He's a guy who's just smart, man. Smart basketball player, knows how to get involved, doesn't necessarily need to score 100 points to have a big game. He's somebody who can do a little bit of everything, or a lot of everything if you need him to be honest with you. I think another thing I like about Thaddeus Young at this stage in his career, he really is fluent in playing about 3 positions. He can play the center position, the power forward position, and the small forward position very, very comfortably. I wouldn't put him at the center to say he's comfortable there, but I'm saying he doesn't have any problem guarding bigger players than him. He doesn't have any problem stretching the floor. He doesn't have a problem in transition. He's just a athletic veteran at this stage in his career who's kept his body in shape, who's had some humbling situations, hasn't been a part of a lot of winning teams, but has showed out everywhere he's been and continues to show why he's still someone that players and teammates, that teams and players want to have on their roster. So I'm a big fan of Thaddeus Young. At this stage in his career, he's going to have a nice opportunity with the San Antonio Spurs, likely starting there at the power forward or small forward position, of course. And he's just going, like I said, he's a veteran, so he's just going to provide a sense of veteran leadership for a team that has a lot of young guys on this roster. So I'd imagine he's going to be an extension of the coach as well. I like Thaddeus Young on this team of young players. He's just going to fit right in. Next name that I'm going to mention here is a guy by the name of White. I believe it's DJ White. Can't remember homie's name. Hate when that happens. But this is a player who's very good. And the thing about White is what he always does when he's healthy is show you that he basically has all-star potential. He's a guy who really does a little bit of everything. He's a Swiss Army knife as well, sort of like a smaller version of Thaddeus Young in some ways. He can do it all. He can score big. He can assist the ball. He can play some defense. 3-level score. I mean, he does literally everything. I don't know why his first name is escaping me at this moment, but his last name is definitely White, and he's definitely a player you need to be aware of on the San Antonio Spurs team. Probably their starting shooting guard at this stage, and he deserves that. You know, even though they have a lot of young players behind him who are going to be pushing him for that position. At this stage in his career, he deserves that. They have a little bit of a logjam at the shooting guard position. You will get into that, but it's not anything too serious because I think the players kind of slip into where they need to be ultimately for this team. So, man, I'm so sorry. I can't think of this man's name. I want to say DJ. I don't think that's a name, but his name is White. He's one of the main players on this team, and trust you me, I know his game. He's a good player, and he's going to continue to get better and better. And again, if you're noticing, all of these players that they have, they're young. You know, these players all have been drafted within the last 4 years, 5 years. And that young core is going to grow together, and you best believe they're going to get a lot out of those guys before it's over with. So, next name I'm going to mention is Lonnie Walker. Lonnie Walker is a player who came along here and there, but kind of got in Popovich's doghouse a little bit. I don't know the story behind that, but his playing time kind of fluctuates. But when he's out there, he shows you that he's a pure scorer. You know, he's somebody who shoot first, shoot second. You know what I mean? But he's definitely an athletic player who can do a lot for you, has a lot of pop. There's been opportunities for him to show that he can really, really do some great things even early on before he was in rotation, and he did. I remember it was a key game that Popovich played him in where he came in and just basically took over. And he had been in the doghouse for a while, so it was like one of those situations where he was making a statement more or less. But this is somebody who deserves more time. I'd like to see him be able to show a little more of what he can do this season, stay healthy. He has two-way potential, both defensive and offensive talent, fantastic shooting touch. So Lonnie Walker is just yet another young player drafted within the last 4 years as a part of this roster that's looking to play that guard position, small forward position. So it's a lot of them. It's a lot of them, man. And the next name we want to mention here is a guy who won the championship last year, Brent Forbes. Now, the thing about Brent Forbes, he grew up in the Spurs organization. He's somebody who was there for many years previous to going to Milwaukee, but he found his way to Milwaukee, and they won the championship. So that was congratulations for sure are due to him. That was a fantastic situation. He had an opportunity to show that he could play. Had a big role in those playoffs with that championship team. And, he was one of those guys that coach put in, and you just didn't know if it was going to be the night where he tears you apart. He's one of those type of guys. Brent Forbes is not going to play every night. And when he does play, it's like he'll give you what is allowed for him to have. He's not one of those guys who's going to take the game over or look to do too much. But there will be games where his number will be called and he'll drop 25 on you. You know what I mean? He's just one of those guys. So a definite weapon for Popovich to have in his arsenal once again. Al-Farouq Amino is the next name. Now, this guy's been in the league for a while now, known as a defensive guy, rebounding guy, can shoot the three a little bit. Started his career with the Clippers. had some really good games, kind of bounced around the league a little bit, had some time with Portland, had some time with Orlando, of course Chicago, as he came over in the trade that also got Thaddeus Young over here and sent obviously DeMar DeRozan to Chicago in the sign and trade. Al-Farouq Amino is going to play defense. He's been in the league, like I said, for a very long time at this point. I think this might be like year 12 or something like that, 13 or something like that for a guy like Al-Farouq. But he's still going. He's still finding his way to be helpful, at this stage of his career. I'm not sure exactly what he has in the tank. I'm not certain. But I do know that him with Thaddeus Young provides him a great deal of defense up front at their small forward, power forward position. So I think he's probably not going to play too much, to be honest with you. But when they do call his number, I'm sure he'll be ready. Next name up, Zach Collins. Zach Collins is a guy who did not develop properly. Had some injury issues, got caught in Portland, and we all know Portland's situation is a little murky, to say the least. When you couple his injury issues coupled with just kind of not having opportunities to really show what he can do, having just kind of been buried up there in a team that didn't really have a pass first player to kind of make him look good. Didn't really have the complementary pieces kind of make him be his best, I guess. And two, he would have to develop more. Of course, the player has to do some work to make sure that when his number's called, he's able to show why he was a top pick in the draft that year. There was two players named Collins in the draft, the one that Atlanta took and himself. And he went several spots before the Atlanta guy. And we know what happened with Atlanta. They were in the Eastern Conference Finals. Homie went on to sign a big, huge contract. So it's time for Zach Collins to show why he, too, was drafted high, get in shape, and do the things that make him the player that he was touted to be. It's not too late. He's not a bust. It's still early. It's only been, 5 years? It's early. So this is an opportunity for him to get a fresh start, brand new situation. His first movement in terms of this league. He finally gets away from Portland. He's going to be playing with Pop. So this is going to be an opportunity for him to show what he can do. And he's going to be battling guys like Thaddeus Young and Al-Farouq Amino and Kelden Johnson for that power forward position, center position. He's going to play some center. He's probably going to be battling Jakob Porter more so. But I can see him playing some 4-5, let's say that, 5-4. Yeah, he should be their backup center, to be honest. That's more likely the thing. Unless they want to play Thaddeus Young at the center position. Chicago did some of that a little bit too. Speaking of Chicago, the San Antonio Spurs picked up a guy who kind of made a name for himself in Chicago, Chandler Hutchinson, who was then traded to Washington, finished out the season there, and I think he was waived, and San Antonio picked him up. Yet another small forward, shooting guard, combination player. I'm not 100% sure of what all Chandler Hutchinson can do, but I do know he was a part of that trade. And the guys that came over to Washington, both him and the other guy, of whom, of course, my mind ain't gonna let me remember his name. They both played well when they got there, so they were able to have some a raise in their value. And Chandler Hutchinson finds himself in a team that will allow him to continue his career in the league. I don't know how much playing time he's gonna get, but I'm sure he'll be battling it out with the rest of these guys to see if he can be a part of a winning situation. Doug Mcdormand is the next name we're going to talk about. Doug McDermott, Doug McBuckets. Y'all know him from college fame. Started his career in Indiana and developed okay. I mean, I wouldn't say he's lived up to his draft name, but a lot of that was hype, to be honest with you. But he has turned into a very reliable three-point shooter, scorer, fantastic free throw shooter once again. And I think somebody that Coach Popovich can use. A guy who can count on the spread the floor, like a lot of players on this roster. They have shooters, and Doug is somebody you can count on. I think, like as I said, at this point in his career, he's a vet, and he's not going to play too much because they do have that small forward position filled out, but he does provide some depth for them just in case. So I'm pretty sure they'll find a role for him. So yeah, man, there's plenty of names here. We haven't gotten to the biggest name. Honestly, for me, the biggest name, the reason why I kind of wanted to get to the San Antonio Spurs. And, there's some other guys that I'm just not familiar with. So I'll just name them off and let you know the rest of the roster. Trey Jones, I'm not certain. I think that might be their draft pick this year, one of their draft picks. Guy by the name of Eubanks. I'm not familiar. And Lukas Smanik. I've heard his name. I think he played with Golden State last year, if I'm not mistaken. Lukas Smanik. I know he's a floor stretcher. I'm pretty sure he played with the Warriors. But that's as far as my understanding goes at this moment. So I don't know that I mentioned Devon Vasil, but Devon Vasil is a player on this team that's very important. He has long arms, and he's someone that shoots the ball. Had a really legendary growth spurt in high school. Kind of grew 4 inches from his sophomore season to his junior season. 4 inches, and dude has kind of turned himself into a really nice player. He has long arms, as I said, shooter, someone who can score the ball. Smart player, not really known for his assists and all that stuff, but definitely someone who can put up a lot of points really quickly, if I'm not mistaken. I still have more homework to do on Devon Vasil, but I know he was drafted very high, if I'm not mistaken, last year, one of their lottery picks. I think that's how they went, and hasn't really had an opportunity to show what he can do. Not really, not yet, but like everybody else on this team, he plays a small forward, shooting guard, combination role. And I think he's going to be one of the guys that they play a little more than some of these other dudes. I think he's going to actually be in the rotation more. He was drafted high. He was somebody that they believed in very seriously. And he's somebody who they'll want to play his value up to see what he can actually do in this league. Because some of these other guys, they know what they can do. Kelden Johnson, White, Thaddeus Young, Doug McDermott, Brent Forbes, they know what these guys can do. I think the key for San Antonio is to make sure they develop the players that they've drafted high to assure that they get the most out of them, whether it be to keep them and turn them into something or be able to trade them for higher value. So that's important. Every team with young talent needs to develop them properly. But the name that I came here to talk about, y'all, is the number 12th pick in the NBA draft. I did a lot of homework on this kid this morning, Josh Primo. And the reason why I'm so intrigued by Primo is because he's the guy that I completely forgot about. One of the most important draft picks of the year. And when I made my draft video, went right over my head. I didn't think nothing of him. When I did my homework on the draft, he was somebody I didn't check on. So this is somebody that I needed to find out about. Drafted too high to not know about. And you know what I found out? That he shouldn't have been drafted at 12. That's what I found out. That I should have been outraged by his draft status being 12. Because he's somebody that they could have taken the end of the first round, maybe the beginning of the second round. And usually when teams do that, it doesn't turn out well. I'm not gonna lie to you. Usually when they do that, that's bad. When you overreach to that degree, bad things happen. I remember Thon Maker was a super overreach. He was supposed to go in the beginning of the second round, into the first round. They took him at like 10. I think Bucks took him like 10. And that hasn't worked out, obviously. I think about Anthony Bennett. We all know that he was a reach. He wasn't supposed to go higher than 8. Cleveland took him at 1 because they knew something we all didn't know, and he turned out to be one of the greatest failures for that franchise ever. And here we have a situation that's similar with Josh Primo. There was 2 of those, actually. It was another one, Josh Giddey. Giddey going to OKC at 6 was a super reach. They probably could have gotten him several spaces down, but it wasn't nothing like this Primo reach. This is far, far greater. But just in terms of acquiring a player, if you want to just remove the idea that they completely failed miserably at valuing their pick properly, if you want to just ignore that and just look at the player they picked up, point guard has a lot of smooth energy to his game, effortless scorer. Doesn't really have a handle yet, but is known for his catch and shoot play. He's good at that. Very good defensively, active hands, good at 50-50 balls. Somebody who's good on the offensive end. If you remember watching my video about the Laker kid, Ayai is his name. You'll notice he's a shooting guard, about 6'3", something like that, 6'4", but specializes at darting into positioning for offensive rebounds. This kid is pretty good at that too. Similar stuff on that end. They just know they have a knack for the ball. They know how to position themselves to out-rebound players that are in position. So that's going to be something that he's going to take advantage of as he grows older. The thing about this kid is he's only 18. He's only 18. So what I think may have happened with San Antonio is they might have got a little Kobe fever. looking back at Kobe Bryant to where it was like that. Everybody knew he was going to be something, but he was so young that you didn't want to take him early because, there were other guys that were more ready than he was. Now we knew those guys weren't going to be better than Kobe. It wasn't no secret, but you would have to wait on Kobe. You would have to develop Kobe, et cetera, et cetera. I think this is a situation where they looked at him. Everybody had that notion about Josh Primo, and they just said, nah, we're going to outsmart the league and just take this guy early because we know what he's going to be and we think we have the role for him. I think the problem is with the pick, though, is when I did my homework on Josh Primo, all of that's cool. Everything I just said is cool. But the problem, the issue that the young fella has right now, which is, of course, he's going to work out because he's a kid, is that his handle isn't on point, and he's not good at pass to turnover ratio. He's one of the worst players out there for pass to turnover. So he's really a score first guy, score second guy, score third guy. Even though he does have some mechanics that allow him to to pass the ball very well, as seen in some of the scouting videos that I watch. He can pass, but the role that he was in college, he didn't have a lot of talented guys around him, that kind of thing. He was more so best when he was getting the ball created for him, when he was in positions to catch and shoot. So even though he was a little shaky in some of those areas as well, when I looked further into his video, ultimately that's what he's best at. And it seems as if the San Antonio Spurs may want to have him on the ball a little more than he probably should be. So I hope they bring him along slowly and just kind of let him fill out his body, because at this point he's still not quite as big as he's going to be. Sort of like DeJounte Murray when they first got him. You could see what his body's going to be, but they're going to have to let it become that, get him in the weight room for a couple years. So a good thing about this Josh Primo situation is because they have so many young players, they're not going to be relying upon him to play right away. And that's okay. It's probably best for him to be buried in the back of the bench behind guys like White and Murray so he can learn. And then he can come into second units with guys like Devon Vasil, and he can have a guy like Murray or White create for him, that kind of thing. And get him in situations to do what it is that he does comfortably without any stress. The problem is he's going to be playing for Pop, and we know how Pop is with rookies. We know how Pop is with young players. He's hard on them. Either you take to that and turn into a great player, or you don't take to that and it could crush you. But I think from what I've seen from this young kid, Primo, the thing that you're going to understand is he can score the ball, y'all. He's not an athletic guy. That's another issue that's concerning. He plays under the rim, but he has fantastic touch under the rim. And we've seen guys like Tony Parker, Allen Iverson, Kyrie Irving. Just because a guy doesn't leap doesn't mean he can't be absolutely and utterly amazing inside the paint. And I think Josh Primo has that ability, that is in his projection. He can get to that point because of his long arms. He has a 6'4" height, I think they said, with 6'9" wingspan or something like that. So, and with the ability to get taller and longer. So, they're investing in his future. They're not looking at what he is. They believe at 18 years old, by the time his fourth year comes around, when it's time to pay him, they think he could be what they expect him to be. And I think they're good at that kind of stuff. They did the same thing with Murray. I think they're doing the same thing with Vasil. They are doing a good job at finding guys, particularly at those positions, and just putting them in a position to play with other guys that are like them, and see which ones work. I think that's what they're trying to do. This is a rebuilding stage, and they're testing out what they can do. I ultimately look at the San Antonio Spurs team and say, you're at peace. You're at peace if you're a Spurs fan, because you understand you have some players that can either be traded for something big or you can believe in and bring stuff to. They're not a playoff team, as I've said, but they have a lot of shooting. I think Murray is the right type of facilitator to make all of this come together. It's not like they're just a bunch of catch and shoot players with nobody to pass the ball to him. I think White can do the job as well. Derek White, I think that's his name. God, I'm sorry about that. But he can do the job as well. He's a good passer, good facilitator, good scorer. So there's no real holes on the roster necessarily. It's just a bunch of young guys that need to come together, and maybe a need for a superstar at the power forward position. I think that's what would be very good for them if they could find their star at that position, because they got the potential to kind of fill other pieces out in other areas. They don't need any small forwards. They definitely don't need any shooting guards. And like I said, I think Murray's a guy. He's definitely the guy. I would feel very confident about DeJounte Murray being my starting point guard going forward. No issue with that. Now, the question I have for San Antonio is, any desire to add Ben Simmons to this roster? I'm not saying they should or shouldn't. I'm just curious if that would be something they'd be interested in doing. Maybe Murray for Ben or whatever the roster numbers would be to match up. I don't think it would cost them too much. As I say, Ben Simmons, his value is low. Bringing him in is risky for many reasons, but I think he's a shot in the arm for this roster. He can get them to a different level than what they're projected to go right now, in my opinion. And they do have the shooters. They have them. You know, you look at the Primos, you look at the Vasils, you look at the Whites. They got the shooters. You know, it's just, you know, do you think DeJounte would be enough? You think Ben Simmons would be an upgrade to DeJounte, or do you think they could play together? That kind of thing. So I don't know. Just a question. I don't know that would be the best spot. Just throwing it out there. So yeah, I like, you know, they got a nice roster. They're not in a position to do too much, but I think what would help them a lot though is that they don't ever do anything like the Josh Primo pick again. I think that would help a great deal. They are in a position to have made that risk and it not be as ridiculous as maybe some other team doing it. I think, in my opinion, they can do something like this, but they shouldn't, just like no one else should. If you can get a guy at the end of the draft, or if you can trade down to get a guy, do that. Do that. Now, if you can't trade down, which was possible, maybe they just couldn't get a deal, then fine. This is the guy you love, you got to take him. This is what the draft's for. You take who you love. But value in draft picks is so important because teams are willing to go through great lengths to get them. A first-round draft pick, especially a 12th pick, you get with the right GM and you can get him to part with his third best player for that 12th pick. You may be able to mess around and get Kristaps Porzingis for that 12th pick. And if you take back some other salary that maybe Dallas didn't want, for example, you may be able to trade down to the pick where you would be able to get Primo. Maybe you can trade down if, let's say, they had 20, for example. You get 20, you get Porzingis. You take back a guy you don't want, take back Porzingis as well, and you got that 12th pick. You got that 20th pick to get Primo anyway. Now you got Porzingis on top of Primo. I mean, it's just, these are the type of things that I think if you have a real savvy and a real smart front office, they can finesse ways of still walking away with Primo without paying for the 12th pick to get him. You understand what I'm saying? You still walk away with him. He's still on this roster. You just got something else with it because you did the right thing with the pick. That's what good GMs do. They don't allow themselves to have to reach for a Josh Primo. I ain't reaching for no Josh Primo. I'm trading down. Even if I only trade down 7 to maybe 3 spots, it's better than keeping it 12. Get him at 15. I don't care how far you got to trade down. Even if you trade 1 spot, you're valuing the pick properly and you're getting something for it. Anything for it. You know, so that's my mindset. I nitpick when it comes to stuff like that, especially when I know they could have probably got 2 picks for that 12th pick and still walked away with Primo. You know what I'm saying? So that's the type of stuff I would say for San Antonio. Ultimately, that's what I wanted to say. Has nothing to do with the player. It just has to do with how you get them and whether or not you left value on the table, for which they did. So, you know, I know that they have some more to do. They have more work to do. They should be looking to get another lottery pick this season. If they're smart, that's what they're doing. They're not looking to make the playoffs. You run your players out there. You play the young guys as much as possible. You trade a guy like Thaddeus Young at the trade deadline, along with Al-Farouq Amino for a draft pick, or you'll likely end up having to waive him so he can sign with a real championship contender like Miami or something. Yeah, I'd be very surprised if Thaddeus Young's on this roster at the end of this season. Very, very surprised. This is not the timeline for a player like that. He needs to be winning. Al-Farouq Amino doesn't have the cachet to really demand that. He's more so a wave guy, find you a spot guy. But Thaddeus Young is more so a guy like he can go to Phoenix and help them right now type of guy. So I don't see him staying with the Spurs unless he just wants to be there. He's out of there. So that's just what I see coming down the line. And yeah, that's what I got, man. That's what I got. Thank you guys for watching, man. I appreciate you being patient with me. My name is BDO44. I'll try to give you each and every team. And, I don't know as much about some of these teams, so I'm looking to learn. But I give you what I got. Thanks for watching. Peace.